So this may be one of the toughest things to overcome. And chances are that you came here because of that one viral video I had. And we really don't talk about this much. Like, this is one of those things where people kind of just live in silence. We deal with heartbreak on our own, and we deal with the moments in our lives that just don't make sense by ourselves. And we don't really know how to unpack, because how do you explain to someone what you're going through? And it makes sense as to why, because it's kind of embarrassing. Like, yes, it hurts, but it's also an embarrassing thought to an extent. The reality that we became so excited for something that could have been and never was. And there's actually a psychological reason behind this. Like, think about it. Sometimes when you sell yourself a dream, when you sell yourself a story, when you consistently think about something daily, you go over this over and over and over again. At some point, you have to break up with it yourself. At some point, your brain has to overcome this thing that never happened. You've conditioned yourself to dream about its possibility so much so that it just became a part of you. And now that it doesn't exist, you have to overcome it too. So how do we heal from that? Like, how do we heal from what could have been and wasn't? Or how do we heal from the thing we desired and never got? And more importantly, how do you actually learn from this? Like, how does this implement in your life for the next things you actually do? You might not like these answers, but I think you really need to hear them. The first one is detachment. And this is one of those social media trends that is happening right now, where it's like the no contact thing. And I agree with it to an extent. I do think it's difficult to do. I do think that sometimes the way we pursue these things, or the way we try to achieve them, makes it a lot worse for us. Detachment is important, but what happens for a lot of us is that we detach from one thing to attach ourselves to another. In detachment, you need to learn to build healthy coping mechanisms. You need to learn to not consistently go back to a thing just because you knew what it was like. You need to learn to stop giving into who you used to be so that you can actually flourish in who you are now. So not going back, not communicating, not looking at these things, but then also finding something to replace that thing. And this is actually a really beautiful thing. It's actually an amazing thing that can happen here, because you allow yourself to build a healthy habit. Like, you allow yourself to build a new pattern that's going to be different compared to what you were already in. Detachment is important, but learn to now attach to things that are going to serve you. Affirming. Now, this is a tough one, because the reality is that sometimes we need to remind ourselves. We need to remind ourselves of what we deserve, of what we don't deserve, of what we consistently have been in. And now you need to affirm every time that you remember these, every time you bring them back up, every time you think of the things that could have been, you need to remind yourself of the things that are. You can't focus so much on what could have been that you don't allow yourself to realize what is. You need to speak into the thoughts of the things that you desired. And yes, it hurts and it sucks and it's a realization, but at the end of the day, if you don't make this realization, it's going to control you. And then ultimately discovering yourself. And I think a lot of people get so wrapped up in waiting for other people. Like, they get so wrapped up in waiting for the next text message, or the next phone call, the next invitation, the next thing that someone else is going to have for them in their lives. And because they keep waiting for this thing, they never actually act or live in the life they have now. If you continue to wait for other people, you'll never get the things you desire, because you're waiting on them for their timeline. It's just not possible to think that you are finally going to do something and get over something, but you continue to go back to it. And this is going to hurt to hear, but the truth is that you know the truth. You know what you deserve. You know the reality of your life. You know where you stand with these people. But if you consistently go back to a place that you were hurt in, you will consistently live in hurt. You made a home in this place because you think, or you've convinced yourself, or you keep trying to convince yourself that is what you want, even to the point of hurt, even to the point of not deserving it. So the choice is yours. Are you going to keep living there and having to re-heal a wound that should have healed already? Are you going to finally decide to affirm yourself, to stand up for what you need, and to detach yourself completely from the lies of what could have been, to connect to what is?